All right, so get this. We're diving deep into Geely, a company that came from basically nothing and became a global car giant. And their story. It's wild.
Oh, it is. It's a story about how you can be determined, be a little scrappy, and it can lead to massive success. Li Shufu, Geely's founder. He started with like 120 yuan.
Wow.
Not much at all.
No, not much at all.
Yeah.
120 yuan. That's like barely enough to get a decent meal these days.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's break down this early hustle. The sources we have paint this picture of a guy who just would not quit. He was doing it all, freelance photography, getting precious metals out of scrap, even making refrigerator parts.
And you got to think about his adaptability. The economy in China back in the 80s and 90s, it was all over the place, regulations changing constantly. Li Shufu had his factory shut down. I mean, multiple times. He had to constantly find new ways to do things.
He was like a chameleon,
Yeah.
just adapting to survive. There's a story that's almost legendary about him buying a brand new Mercedes,
Yeah.
but he didn't buy it to drive.
No.
He took the entire car apart, piece by piece, to study how it worked.
That's the kind of thing that separates the people who dream from the people who actually do it.
Right.
He knew if he wanted to build his own cars, he needed to know how they worked. It's like he reverse engineered a masterclass in how to build a car.
Talk about hands-on learning experience. All right, but let's be honest, cars weren't his first time in the vehicle world. He started with motorcycles. Seems like a bit of a detour, right?
No, not at all. It was a brilliant move.
Yeah.
At the time, motorcycles in China weren't nearly as regulated as cars. Scooters were getting popular. Lai Shufu saw an opportunity. He could get experience manufacturing, build up some capital, and here's the key. He could secure a production license. All of this would be critical for him down the road.
So he was already playing the long game back then.
Oh, absolutely. He wasn't just trying to build motorcycles. He was setting himself up for something way bigger. And you can see that in his first acquisition, a failing state-owned motorcycle factory.
He didn't want the factory, did he?
No, he wanted that license that came with it.
Wow, that is some serious next-level thinking.
Yeah.
But he sets his sights on the big prize, breaking into the Chinese car market. It was like trying to get into a fortress guarded by giants.
Totally. It was David versus Goliath. The market was totally dominated by state-owned companies and joint ventures with foreign companies. Private companies like Li Shufu's. They were outsiders. Almost unwelcome.
And they didn't make it easy for him, did they?
Not a chance. The sources we have talk about years of lobbying, ridicule from the big companies, bureaucracy all over the place.
It's kind of amazing he didn't just give up. Imagine that pressure, investing millions of dollars of his own money. Everyone being skeptical, constantly being told no.
Yeah, but he kept at it.
And this is where that Mercedes he took apart comes back into play.
Exactly. He used parts from that Mercedes and some parts from a Hunky. That's a Chinese luxury car.
Okay.
To build his first prototype, the Geely No 1. You got to picture this car. It's cobbled together from other cars. It's a symbol of how bold he was.
It was like a statement, wasn't it? Like him saying, hey, I'm serious about this, even if you don't take me seriously.
Absolutely. And that boldness, that refusal to quit, it paid off. After years of struggle, Li Shufu finally did what everyone thought was impossible.
2001. Against all odds, Geely gets a production license. The first fully private Chinese company allowed to make cars on a large scale.
A huge turning point.
Yeah.
And this wasn't just some symbolic victory. It meant the whole landscape of the car industry in China was about to change. Geely, the underdog. They were officially in the game.
I love it.
Yeah. So Geely's got their license. They're ready to take on the giants in the Chinese car market. But you got to remember, the big players, Volkswagen and Geely, they had a huge head start. People already loved their cars.
That's a tough spot to be in. It's not like Geely could just roll out some luxury cars and everyone would switch overnight.
No way. But this is where Li Shufu's understanding of the market really comes in. He saw an opportunity. He realized that everyday people in China wanted cars, but they couldn't afford those expensive foreign brands.
So instead of going head-to-head with the big guys, Geely focused on making their cars affordable.
Exactly. They were way cheaper than the competition. And that made a huge difference. Millions of people in China who never thought they could own a car. Now they could.
It's like they made owning a car possible for everyone, not just the rich people.
Yeah, you got it. And that changed everything. The big companies, they had to lower their prices to keep up. And that was good for everyone who wanted to buy a car, Geely coming into the market. It made everyone step up their game.
That's awesome. But those early Geely cars weren't exactly known for being super stylish. I remember seeing pictures. They looked a lot like other cars on the market, especially the Yalis.
Yeah, that's true. They got some criticism for their designs. Some people said they were just copying other cars. But you got to remember, Geely was still a young company. They didn't have a ton of money. They were trying to make a name for themselves in a really tough market. They had to be practical. They had to focus on making their cars work well and be affordable, even if that meant they weren't winning any design awards.
So it was all about getting cars out there, getting people driving them.
Exactly. But Li Shufu knew that they couldn't just keep selling cheap cars forever. If they wanted to build a really strong brand, they had to make better cars.
So how did they go from just affordable to actually good?
They started putting a lot of money into research and development. They hired really experienced engineers and designers from some of the big car companies, and they worked hard to make their manufacturing process better.
So basically, they were setting themselves up to make cars that were more sophisticated, cars that could compete on a global level.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a step-by-step process. First, they made cars that people could afford. Then they focused on making those cars better.
Makes sense. It's like they started with a small target audience and then grew from there.
That's a great way to put it. And they weren't just thinking about China anymore. They wanted to sell their cars all over the world.
Wow, talk about aiming high. But how do you go from being a big deal in China to competing with companies like Toyota, Ford, Volkswagen? It's a whole different game.
It is. And they needed a bold plan. They couldn't just keep selling cheap cars. They needed to build a reputation for making high-quality, innovative cars. Cars that could stand out globally. And what they did next, it was a huge surprise to everyone.
Wait, are we talking about the Volvo acquisition?
You got it. That's where we'll pick up next time.
Okay, so we've seen how Geely went from basically nothing to dominating the Chinese car market. But they didn't stop there.
Nope. They wanted to be a global player.
Right.
They weren't content with just sending cars overseas. They wanted to go head-to-head with the best of the best.
Become a true global force.
Exactly. They wanted to be recognized as a real contender.
Ambitious, for
Yeah.
sure. But their next move, it surprised a lot of people.
It did.
We're talking about them buying Volvo.
Yep.
The Swedish brand.
Yeah.
Known for safety,
Yeah.
but not necessarily known for being exciting.
Right. A lot of people were confused by that decision. At the time, Volvo was having money problems. Some people thought it was a dying brand. But Li Shufu, he saw something different.
Yeah.
He saw potential. Like an uncut diamond.
So what did he see in Volvo that everyone else missed?
He saw their engineering, their reputation for safety, their strong presence in Europe.
Yeah.
It was a chance to get decades of experience and a brand known for quality.
But it was a huge risk, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was. Here's this young Chinese company, pretty unknown outside of China,
Right.
and they're taking over a well-established European brand. It could have been a disaster.
So how did he handle it?
He basically took a step back. He let Volvo keep doing its own thing, keep its design philosophy, keep its Swedish identity. It was like he was saying, we trust you. Do what you do best. We'll give you the resources you need to succeed.
That's a lot of trust.
Yeah.
Especially in a situation like that.
It was. And it was a brilliant move. Volvo was able to use Geely's manufacturing power and access to the Chinese market, and Geely got access to Volvo's technology, engineering talent, and that brand prestige.
So everyone won.
Yeah.
And it launched Geely onto the global stage. All of a sudden, they weren't just another Chinese car company. They owned one of the most respected brands in the world.
And that wasn't the end of it. They kept making these strategic acquisitions. They bought Lotus, the British sports car company, Proton, the Malaysian car company, even a piece of Daimler, the company that owns Mercedes-Benz.
Wait, hold on. From taking apart a Mercedes to owning a part of the company? Talk about a full circle moment.
It really shows how Geely thinks long-term.
Yeah.
They are determined to become a major player in the global car industry.
So we've gone deep into Geely's story. What are the big takeaways for our listeners?
I think the biggest one is to dream big. Geely Shufu started with almost nothing, but he had this huge ambition. He hit roadblocks, he faced setbacks, people doubted him, but he never gave up. Geely's story shows that if you're determined, if you can adapt, if you're strategic, you can achieve anything.
Yeah, it's a reminder that innovation can come from anywhere. Geely shook things up in the car world. They showed that if you're willing to push the limits, take risks, and keep evolving, you can do amazing things.
It makes you wonder, what other industries are ready for this kind of shakeup? What companies or people out there are going to be the next Geely? That's something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Well, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the world of business and innovation. Until then, keep exploring. And remember, never underestimate the power of a big dream.